In the early hours of Wednesday, January 8th, Iran was ready for a fight. 2:15 a.m. Tehran time, it launched several barrages of missiles, nearly 2 hours worth, hitting 2 coalition bases in Iraq. Midway through the strikes at 3:15 a.m., the Federal Aviation Administration issued what's called a notice to airmen, banning all American carriers from flying over Iran, citing potential for miscalculation. Almost immediately, 3 British Airways flights start to divert midair. An Air Canada flight from Toronto to Dubai shifts as well, but no airlines other than the American-affiliated ones are obliged to adhere to the notice. It's not clear whether the Ukrainian airline would have even seen it. It was up to Iran to close the airspace entirely. It didn't, a point Ukrainian authorities are making forcefully.
They should have closed their airspace because they had suspicion that something could interfere with the safety.
10 flights took off between midnight and 6 a.m. Tehran time, all of them effectively on schedule, all taking the prescribed route. The only flight out of Tehran delayed at all and noticeably off schedule was Flight 752. Supposed to leave at 5:15, we now know it departed at 6:12. Delayed, the airline says, while luggage was offloaded for 2 passengers who didn't make it. Does the delay have significance? We don't know yet. For nearly 3 minutes, the plane pings a location every few seconds. At 6:14:57, 3 separate ground radar stations lose the signal. This is now known as the moment a missile hit the plane, disrupting its instruments. In the days since the downing, we've all seen videos emerge of that moment from several angles. What they show is that for nearly 3 minutes, that stricken plane is still in the sky before falling, shattered to earth. 6:18 a.m. Tehran time, it's down. Giancarlo Fiorella was in Toronto and not sleeping. He's a visual investigator with Bellingcat, an open-source collective of investigators around the world. He saw the tweets about the crash and the immediate report from Iran of a technical error and got out of bed.
Just by searching the flight number, you get data for that flight. I also took a look at the speed and altitude graph that this website provides.
He saw how the data just drastically ends for Flight 752 and immediately compared it with a Beck Air flight a few weeks ago that had legitimate engine failure.
You can see here the graph is very different. The altitude, the speed, you can tell that something sort of happened here.
So while the Iranians were immediately saying a technical failure, the first thing you looked at, the evidence suggested likely not the case.
And also the speed with which they made that determination was suspect.
So the first lie was exposed within minutes. By about 9 a.m. Tehran time, more social media users started bravely sending in images. And all around the world, in bedrooms and living rooms, people started geolocating, identifying where it had happened and what stories the debris was telling.
We saw these 2 images here, and people started to notice that there were what looked to be puncture sort of entry points in this part of the airplane that some people said, well, that could be indicative of like shrapnel from a missile. At this point, though, it was way too early to be jumping to those conclusions.
Within hours, 2 more crucial images emerged from users claiming to be in Iran. Different perspectives on what seems to be parts of a Tor missile, which Iran uses. Everything changed with the videos. The mathematically minded independently went to work studying them, the angles, the landmarks. It got clearer.
And one of my colleagues created a panorama. So in this case, the cues that we found were a block of buildings, right? There's something like light poles here. And also, we saw something like a construction site.
Because information is power, they started a thorough library. Nearly 200 visuals collected and archived because some have already started to disappear online. Average citizens were on their way to exposing the truth, including, crucially, where the missile might have come from.
And if you wait a couple seconds, you see the flash of the explosion. That's a missile detonating in the air.
That goes straight up.
Yes, it appears to do so, right? So based on a bunch of factors that we can figure out, including an estimated angle at which the missile came out, the velocity of these missiles as they fly through the air, we can get an estimate from where the missile was launched. And so the vantage point was roughly in this direction. You see the missile coming from behind a hill, and Wikimapia tells us that there are military bases in this area.
That doesn't settle anything. Iran making arrests isn't a conclusion either. How could an operator on a missile system mistake an airliner like that? Who gave the orders? Why were so many pointing cameras at the sky at that moment?
People in Iran, in this particular area, would have been trying to go to sleep. They would have heard an explosion. They would have run outside with their cameras, pointed it sort of in the direction that maybe they thought they heard it from, and what they captured was the second missile.
That there was a second missile was just a theory until a video emerged today, seeming to show 2 missiles fired about 30 seconds apart.
So the Iranian government can either choose to hand over the black box or not, can bulldoze a site or not, but it sounds like the truth is going to find its way out there anyway.
Yeah, that's what we hoped, and that's why precisely why we do this sort of work. We want to preserve digital evidence in the event that some powerful actor decides that they're not going to tell us what happened, that they're not going to be truthful.
Investigators, including Canadians, are now on the ground. The work ahead is hard, but there is a bit of a head start, thanks to those who got up in the middle of that terrible night 1 week ago.